Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Justin Haskins Show. My name is Justin Haskins. Today, we're going to be talking about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We've got a whole new study that just came out from the Heartland Institute that I was a co-author on, the lead author on, and the study shows some absolutely incredible facts, not opinion, facts about the Republican tax cuts that were first passed in 2017 and went into effect in 2018. And this is an incredibly important story because Congress right now is considering whether to extend the personal income tax cuts that occurred as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, also called the Trump tax cuts or the Republican tax cuts plan. And the tax cuts are set to expire at the end of the year. So if Congress does not renew these provisions in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, then that means Americans are going to see their tax bills go up significantly. We're going to talk about how much your tax bill could go up as a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act not being renewed at the end, before the end of this year. But before we get into the details of that, before we get into my article for Fox News talking about this, I want to give you a quick call to action. My channel is still a relatively new channel and we're still growing. We need your help. We need people to like the channel. We need people to like these videos, leave a comment under the videos, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button so that you get notifications when new videos come out. All of these things are going to help this content break through big tech algorithms that hold channels like mine back. So if you're interested in helping more people see pro-liberty, free market content like mine, please like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything, no money at all, just a little bit of your time, and I would greatly appreciate it. All right, let's get straight to the topic of the day, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So as I mentioned earlier, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was first passed in 2017. It was really the most important law passed by the Trump administration in his first term. It's set to expire at the end of this year, 2025. So if Congress does not pass it, does not renew the tax cuts, it's going to expire. All right. Congress right now is really, it's run by Republicans, but it's a very narrow majority in both the House and the Senate. That means that it's going to be really tough to get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act renewed, but it is absolutely essential that this happen because, as you're going to see soon, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act significantly benefited working people, middle-class families, everybody. Every single income bracket received a cut under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But in terms of percentage, it was the middle class that benefited the most, the working class and middle class that benefited the most from the TCJA. And in addition to that, when you apply the percentage cuts over the entire period of time that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act has been in effect, what you see is that thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars have been saved by middle income families because of the TCJA. And if it is not renewed, that means your tax bill is going to go up by thousands of dollars over the next several years in total. So it's really important that this law gets passed. So I want to talk about it because there's so many things that are said about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that just flat out are not true. One is that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act doesn't help anyone except for the wealthy, that the middle class are essentially paying for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act really didn't provide any benefits to the middle class. It was only for rich people. None of that stuff is true. Let's get into the numbers so you can see that for yourself. This is an article that I wrote for foxnews.com. It's called New Study About IRS Reveals Just How Much Trump Tax Cuts Saved You. It was published on April 17th, 2025, if you're looking for it online. I'm also going to post a link in the show notes in case you're interested. So here's what we found. Here's the big sort of picture takeaway. Based on evidence that we got from the IRS, actual data from the IRS, we estimate that tens of millions of filers have saved thousands of dollars. Tens of millions of American filers have saved thousands of dollars because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Okay? If they don't renew it, tax bills are going to go up by thousands of dollars over several years because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Okay? The other really amazing thing that we found, one of the big sort of headliners, was that not only did every income bracket, as I already said, receive a tax cut, the taxpayers who received the biggest cuts in terms of percentage saved were those who earned less than $75,000. So if you're a filer who earns less than $75,000, you're in the category of people that got the biggest percentage tax cut. So, for example, as I point out in the story here, for example, the average filer in the IRS's 40,000 under 50,000 bracket paid 18.8% less in taxes in 2022 than they did in 2017. So if you earn between $40,000 and $50,000, your taxes are nearly 19% lower now, based on 2022 data, which is the most recent data we have, than they were before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act went into effect. That means that the tax cuts, if they're allowed to expire, your tax bill will probably go up about that percentage, about 18 to 20% or so. Okay? So this is a huge deal. This is a huge deal. Another example was filers in the $50,000 under $75,000 bracket, so $50,000 to $75,000. We're talking about filers here, so not just individuals. This includes families. Was 16.5% less in 2022 than it was in 2017. So those tax bills went down by almost 17% for those who earned $50,000 to $75,000. Now, when you compare that to the big money earners, for example, people who earned $5 million to $10 million, those people received a tax cut, but it was only 2.3%. Compared to 16.5% for those who earned between $50,000 and $75,000, and 18.8% cut for those who earned between $40,000 and $50,000. So we're talking about percentage-wise, huge cuts for the middle class and working class, and small cuts percentage-wise for wealthier individuals. Now, some people will look at that and say, well, yeah, okay, but 2% for someone who makes $5 to $10 million is still a lot of money. Well, yeah, it is. The point of the tax cuts was to give everybody a tax cut, and it gave wealthy people a tax cut. It gave lower income people a tax cut. But here's the truth. The truth is lower income and middle income people do not pay that much in federal taxes, income taxes, compared to people who are on the wealthier end of the spectrum. And I'm not just talking about millionaires. If you make over $200,000 in this country, and that includes couples who have a combined income of $200,000, you're paying most of the tax burden. Most of the tax burden is paid by people who earn over $200,000. Okay? People who earn less than $75,000 are not paying that much of the tax burden, and they don't really pay that much in taxes. A lot of those people who fall into that category are only paying a few $1,000s in taxes. Okay, so it's hard to give those people a gigantic tax cut because in reality, they're not paying that much in federal income tax to begin with. The people who are paying the most, the people who are hit the hardest by taxes, federal income taxes, are people who earn in the six figures and above. And the higher up you go, the bigger the burden is for you in a lot of cases. That's not totally universally true. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, that's how it works. Now that doesn't mean though, that in terms of raw number of dollars, the middle income and working class people just didn't really get, yeah, they got 18% cut in their taxes, but what does that even mean? Or they got a 16% or 10% cut, depending on the bracket you're talking about. But how much money did they actually save? Well, we looked at that. And what we found was this. Many middle income and working class people saved thousands of dollars because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act over the course of the past several years that the TCJA has been in effect. So to give you an example from my Fox News article, our analysis found from 2018 to 2022, filers earning between $50,000 and $75,000 annually saved an average of $4,500, $4,516, because of the personal income tax cuts contained in the TCJA. For those in the $75,000 to $100,000 bracket, and that includes couples, remember, the savings jumped to almost $6,000, $5,900. And those earning $100,000 to $200,000 saved an astonishing $9,600, $9,638 over 5 years. But that doesn't take into account the last couple of years. Because remember what I said earlier, the data we have is only goes back to 2022. We have 2023 and we have 2024. What about those years? We got to add them in as well. Well, we were able to take historic tax data and project it forward to come up with a reasonable estimate for those 2 years as well. And when you add that in, the number jumps up even more. In 2022, more than 50 million filers, middle-class filers, fell into brackets that saved on average between $6,300 and $13,400, almost $13,500 in total savings. Even lower income and working class Americans saw significant savings. We're looking at between $30,000 to $50,000 saved, $2,500 to $3,800 over the same period. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars saved. I'm going to post in the show notes a link to the full policy paper, which has a big table, has several tables in it, that will allow you to see all the data if you're interested in learning more about how the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act actually saved middle income and working class people thousands of dollars. So why does all of this matter? It matters because, like I said earlier, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is potentially on the chopping block, at least the personal income part of it. The business tax cuts were permanent. The personal income tax cuts were not made permanent. And the reason for that, which means they're going to expire at the end of this year. And the reason for that was because the only way to get the law through Congress at the time, they had to do it through this process called budget reconciliation. It was the only way to do it because Democrats were completely opposed to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And as a result of that, they had to do it through a budget reconciliation process, which meant that certain parts of the law had to be temporary. So the personal income tax part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 were temporary. It's now set to expire. The business tax cuts are permanent. They're staying in place no matter what. But what that means is that you don't have big businesses lobbying for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to stay in effect because they know that their part of it is already in effect. So it's up to regular people. It's already permanent. So regular people have to stand up and demand that Congress extend the personal tax cuts. Some people are going to think, oh, well, of course they're going to do this. Of course they're going to extend it. And that's what I used to think. I used to think, of course they're going to extend it. Politically, it would be stupid to do this. But the reality is, Democrats have been extremely successful, and many people in the mainstream media, at convincing regular people that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act has been bad for them, and that actually we should just get rid of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, even the personal income tax part of it, and just start all over again. But in reality, if we were to do that, it would crush middle income and working class people. It would significantly harm higher income earners as well, who are a big driver of the economy and a lot of small business owners. It would crush all of these people and make life significantly worse. And you know what? I don't know that Democrats have a problem with that right now because they're not the ones in power, so they're not going to be blamed for it. So you can see how this works. And Republicans play those kind of games when Democrats are in power too. Okay. So I'm not just trying to make this a Republican, Democrats are evil thing. That happens all the time. It's politics in Washington. The bottom line is this: the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was a really good thing for the vast majority of Americans. The vast majority of Americans across all income brackets saved money. Thousands of dollars were saved because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Tens of millions of people benefited significantly because of it. Don't let Congress play politics and let these important tax cuts expire. Because if we allow that, if the American people allow that, it's going to mean their tax bills going up thousands of dollars over the next several years. And that might be okay for some members of Congress because they can use that to help, win elections in the future. But for people like us who are just caught in the middle, this is terrible news. So we got to get these tax cuts renewed. make them permanent so we don't have this problem again. We don't have to keep doing this every 5-10 years. Let's make them permanent. Let's get these tax cuts into law and let's save money. Because how many of you watching this video right now actually want to pay more in taxes? I'm willing to bet it's very few of you. And the rest of you are insane because you should not want to pay more in taxes. We're already taxed too much. All right, that's it for today's show. It's going to be kind of a short episode. Again, if you're interested in learning more, check out the show notes on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on another platform, go to the YouTube channel. You can check out the show notes. In some cases, you can check out the show notes on some other platforms as well. You'll find links to the full policy study. You'll find links to my article in foxnews.com. I've also got articles that came out for townhall.com, and I've got another article that's coming out for theblaze.com. Probably will have more articles coming out about this. I'm trying to spread the word about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So leave a comment on the video and please subscribe to the channel. But most importantly of all, until next time, please, I'm Justin Haskins. Please stay free and stay blessed.